Okay, good evening, everyone. How's everybody doing tonight? My name is Professor Joseph Tipay from the Art Department. Thank you for your time and your space. So welcome to the second annual Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month Conference. This conference is hosted by the Bakersfield College Social Justice Institute, and special thanks to Imelda Valdez and the AB 540 and Undocumented Students Program. Also, Reggie Williams and the Levin Institute for the Humanities and the Bakersfield College Department of Art, for the support and co-sponsorship of these events. I'm going to give a personal shout out to Andrew Bond and Nicole Carrasco, air horns, for their selfless support and hard work. So you are seen, celebrated, and appreciated. So you can support AAPI Heritage all year long. It don't have to stop at a month. Nope. And how do you do that? By being anti-racist and standing up against and speaking out against AAPI hate. It could be something as simple as don't say that. That don't fly around me, right? Also advocating for AAPI rights at the local and national level, and by supporting AAPI creators. So put your money where your mouth is and support creators so they can give you some really dope content. And speaking of dope content and dope creators, let me introduce tonight's guest, Matthew Hashiguchi. Matthew is a filmmaker, photographer, and assistant professor in multimedia film and production at Georgia Southern University. His first feature-length documentary, Good Luck Soup, was broadcast nationally on PBS World's America ReFramed and received a 2016 Documentary Fund Award from the Center for Asian American Media and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Tonight, he's joining us to talk about his journey to his career as a filmmaker and educator. But first, I will hand it over to him to introduce his short documentary, which is really, really good. Oh, so good. American Dreaming. So Matthew, it's all yours.
Thank you, Joseph.
Yes.
Thank you everyone for having me here and inviting me to share this work and to talk. And I'm really looking forward to just a conversation with everyone and talking about the experience of Asian Americans, and also how the experience of being undocumented is felt within the Asian American community. But this is about an 11-minute short that I filmed and produced in, I think, 2017-ish. And it started out as an idea and changed to a different idea. But it was a learning experience for me because it was a story, an issue that I was unfamiliar with, and eye-opening, I guess. It just kind of exposed me to issues that I had never personally come across. And that's what I'm hoping it does for anyone who views it, is that it exposes individuals in our country and society who are often vilified, but it reveals them to be hardworking people who are trying to make their way within this country. So it's about 11 minutes. It follows two characters. One main character is kind of the main voice throughout, but it's looking at one character who's was born in the Philippines and another character who is born in Mexico, and they live in Georgia. One character lived in Atlanta, another lived in Savannah, but Georgia in the Southeast is a place that is quite inhospitable to minorities, immigrants, and their prospect of attending college is quite difficult. And that's what this story focuses on, is them trying to attend college, and what sort of obstacles are up against them when they're trying to do that. So without further ado, we can watch the short and then talk afterwards.
I didn't make any choice to come here to the United States. That choice was made for me, but I still had to pay the consequences. I was born in the Philippines, and then I moved to Macon, Georgia when I was 1 year old. When I was 10 years old, I became undocumented when it was time for us to apply for our green cards. My dad had to pass an English competency exam called the TOEFL. He ended up not passing, and Immigration and Naturalization Services ended up denying our applications for a green card in 2003. My mom told me, "You're not gonna be able to go to college if you don't study hard, if you don't work hard enough to get a scholarship, because we don't have the money to put you through college." The prospect of college for undocumented students is very, very bleak. If you're undocumented, you can't even enroll at the top most selective colleges and universities in the state of Georgia. You can't even attend. At any other school, you have to pay out-of-state tuition, which is 3 to 4 times greater than in-state tuition. And for the undocumented student whose parents are working multiple jobs to support the family, the biggest obstacle to going to college is financial. I wanted so badly to go to college, and it was just absolutely devastating to know that no matter how many A's I got, that I still wasn't going to be able to go to college. It made it hard for me to live, to be perfectly honest. I tried to kill myself. I was just completely ready to give up. That was kind of my birth as an activist. When I tried to kill myself, I made the decision that I'm gonna be a force of positive change in this movement. I'm gonna make sure that no one else has to go through what I've been going through. I'm the program coordinator for the first nonprofit dedicated to the civil, social, and economic rights of Asian Americans here in the Southeast. We're in the middle of fighting some anti-immigrant legislation that would defund private universities and colleges here in the state of Georgia that adopt sanctuary campus policies. If they provide a safe haven to undocumented students, state and federal funds would be withheld from those institutions.
We live in Atlanta. It's very diverse. You know, the rest of Georgia is very racist. And so at the Capitol, you could see that firsthand because those representatives are coming from the different parts of Georgia, right? So, hello, how are you? My name is Ismail Hooney. How are you doing? Can we have 2 minutes of your time real fast?
2 minutes.
Yes. We're a bunch of students from different universities across Georgia,
okay.
And we're asking you to please let the speaker not present House Bill 37 on sanctuary campuses. We need to feel safe. At least give us our schools. Our schools should be the only places.
But we'll have to agree to disagree on that.
All we're asking today is just for this bill to be held. That's all. So we can talk about it. We need to have a space, at least the learning environment. We understand laws outside of schools.
Understand this. I'm not telling the speaker what to do.
Yeah, but can you just hold off? Ask him to hold off on the vote. That's all. We need our leaders to speak up.
No, I will not do that.
Oh, why? Wow.
The southern region of the United States has historically been, for people of color, for immigrants, for people who are not white, one of the more hostile regions here in the United States. And I can honestly say that I've experienced pushback from people whenever I declare that I am a Southerner. Here in Georgia, it's not the best place to be if you're an undocumented immigrant. I've been here 21 years, y'all. And I still have to pay 3 to 4 times greater of a tuition amount than my citizen peers. I think that's unfair. If you're undocumented and you end up going to college, you're either really smart or you're just very lucky. Across the United States, if these opportunities aren't available to you, why try? I felt like nothing I did would ever be significant enough for me to make something of my life. High school was when all of my friends were out there, they were getting their driver's licenses, they started getting their first jobs, thinking about where they were gonna go to college. But there I was left behind. I couldn't do all that stuff. Thankfully, Mercer University, it's right down the street from where I grew up. They decided to give me a full academic scholarship. My freshman year, I was elected as a freshman senator. I joined a mock trial team. I was crowned homecoming king. The shining moment for me was my junior year when I was elected by my peers to be the student body president. Immigrants here in the United States are most well equipped to be contributing members of American society. But because of the way that we as a society treat undocumented immigrants, I would even say all immigrants, all of that potential is just squashed.
I used to think that if you work hard for something, you'll have a reward. And I don't think that anymore. The ones who are undocumented, our American dream, it's in limbo. There was a moment when I hit like rock bottom. And that was when I had to apply for college. I don't have a work permit. I don't have a social. And then I don't have a driver's license. I was able to get into college, but I did not have enough money to pay for my tuition. I was like, nope, the American dream is not for me. All this was a lie. All the government cared was that I was missing a 9-digit number. But I have found a way. To pay for tuition, I pay for it out of pocket. I work, I have 2 jobs, and I haven't taken a break. School, work, homework, some school activities, and that's basically it. The level of hardship that you experience as an 18-year-old, when all you want to do is just focus in school, but you have to work harder just because you're undocumented, it takes a toll on you. It was also depressing when DACA passed and I was not able to get it. So after I'm done with college, I'm not going to be able to work my degree.
Our immigration system is broken, and DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. This is an executive order that was signed into law by President Obama, and it allows beneficiaries of the program to receive a 2-year temporary stay of lawful presence here in the United States. Although it has definitely helped the 3 of our lives, it is a temporary solution to a problem where we need a permanent fix. What's going to happen when the next president of the United States takes office? What if that president doesn't like this program and wants to get rid of it? I circle back to being fully undocumented and having to live in fear and anxiety. Am I going to be able to wake up in my bed tomorrow morning, or am I going to wake up in an immigrant detention center on my way to getting deported?
Actually, I always feel unsafe. I always feel like one day immigration is going to come to my school and be like, hey, you kid, you look Hispanic, you're brown, you're probably illegal. I didn't qualify for DACA just because I was enrolled into the American school system later. But Trump decided to rescind DACA, so now I'm stuck. I cannot apply for it anymore. If DACA ends, the hopes that we have right now, they're gonna be gone. Just because of where we come from or just because the way we look doesn't mean that all we have to do is work in construction, be your housekeepers, be your cooks. We also have the right to be your doctor, your lawyer, your teachers. After I'm done with college, I have no idea what's gonna happen. So I don't wanna be with a college degree and go work with my mother as a housekeeper, because I mean, that's an option. No matter what it takes, I'm gonna succeed. I'm gonna work as a psychologist. But at this point, I really don't know if it's gonna be in this country anymore or not. If there's nothing that I can do, my only resource will be to go back to Mexico or go to another country that actually values me as a person.
I don't feel like I belong in the Philippines. I don't know anything about it. I came here to this country when I was so young. I was 1 year old. And even though living in the South has been tough, I grew up here. I don't know any other place. And It's just where I call home.
My life is in a limbo. I don't want to live like this for the rest of my life.
Okay. That went fast. Was that 10 minutes? 11 minutes? Yeah, I've seen this a couple times recently. It's screened at an event here in Savannah about a week ago. And every time I see it recently, I think, God, I should update it or change things just to kind of give a more contemporary understanding of what's going on. But I haven't done that. But what's great about these shorts is that it allows for conversation. You can watch something fairly quickly and then just dive into conversation. I think shorts are really great for that and this sort of format to have more of a conversation as opposed to just watching something for 90 minutes. But those are two great people. I think Raymond and Daniela are brilliant people and are far more active in American civics and politics and rights than I ever have been and probably ever will be. But I think they're two shining examples of people that we want in this country and in this society, contributing and trying to make our country a better place. And it's just a shame that they're faced with such opposition from people and governments and policies that are trying to limit their opportunities. But they're brilliant. They are such brilliant people, and I was just very fortunate I was fortunate that they allowed me to document their story and tell it and to spend time with them. But just really smart people who if they've achieved so much even with these restrictions and rules against them. It's, if they didn't have these things against them, I wonder what they would have accomplished at this point, but they've just done so much so far in their short lives.
So that was beautiful, and I was able to watch it, and I'm Filipino and Mexican, so to be able to see two sides of my identity, it just struck a chord with me, because you forget about the API, any other component, especially living here in the Central Valley, and it was just cool to see both of those like split, and I was like, oh my God, it just really, it just stuck to my heart, and it was so beautiful to watch. It was so well done, and I was really wrapped up into what these young people had to say and give. They're so brave. I think you think about how young, brave individuals and how we see them over and over again, and then you see how selfless they are and how much they give. It makes you want to work so much harder. So thank you for that. I have a personal question. Why film? As a visual artist, I mainly do 2D work, and I always say when I teach about other forms of art, I always say, to me, film is so difficult because you're not dealing with one frame, you're dealing with several frames, and it has to make sense, all these separate frames. So I feel like, to me, that's one of the hardest forms of visual expression. So why did you choose that path?
Well, I started out as a photographer, so two-dimensional single images, and something that I think that, and then I changed to documentary and moving images and motion pictures. But what I love about motion pictures and film and videos is that you have thousands, if not millions, of frames that you can use to tell a progression and to convey a structure and changes. And I think with this story, there's a beginning, and then there's a middle, and then an end or present or future. And I think this is a story that there's a beginning that we need to understand, that I don't think many people know about or try to learn about. And beginning meaning, how did these individuals come to these circumstances? You know, why are they undocumented, and what led to that, and what issues have prevented them from achieving what they're doing. So I think there's a progression here that I would have struggled telling that progression as a still photographer. I guess if you join the photographs with text, you could tell that story. But I certainly don't consider myself a writer. But that's something I struggled with when I was a photographer, is that, you know, you have, in many cases, one picture. And does that one picture tell the whole story? Not really. It tells a specific story, a specific moment. But what is wonderful about film is that it combines many moments, many visual moments, and then sound, and then the magic of editing that combines it all and creates a structure and emphasizes certain moments, and allows you to linger and kind of dwell on certain scenes or actions or moments. So that's something that I really appreciate film for, is its ability to convey a range of ideas and moments and experiences into one single film or video.
Thank you. And we have some questions coming up here. So one question is, the response is great film. Is Georgia a bit of an anomaly concerning AAPI experiences in the South? Are there other Southern states, Arkansas, for example, that have similar AAPI experiences? What are some AAPI Southern stories, in your view, that have yet to be captured by research or filmmakers? It's a pretty loaded question, so I can repeat it if you need me to.
Yeah, you know, I'm not from the South, so I'm from Cleveland, Ohio, and prior to living here, I was in Boston. So in Cleveland, I grew up in a strong Japanese American community. And then in Boston, I went to Chinatown all the time, and they have a pretty strong Chinatown. So when I moved to the South, I didn't, there was no visual presence of an Asian American, Asian community. It just, you don't see it. So I started this out trying to understand what it's like being Asian in the South. You know, where do you fit? Growing up in the Midwest, there were certainly those issues. Where do you fit? I think often when we talk about, right, at least in the past, when you talk about minority experiences or minority rights, it's often African American. And I think much of our society dwells on white or black, and Asian Americans are kind of like, where are they? Who do you lump them in with? And my grandmother actually has a funny story about that. She grew up in Florin, California, was in the internment camps. And after the internment camp, they moved to Louisiana. And this was during Jim Crow. She went on a bus, and she first went to the back of the bus, and an African-American woman said, "You can't sit here." And then a white woman went to the back of the bus, grabbed her, and put her in the middle of the bus. So even, you know, a great example of where do Asian Americans fit in the society, and where are our communities. So, you know, when I moved here, I was trying to understand, what is it like being Asian American in the South? And I think it's somewhat similar to Midwest, where you're kind of forced to just find pockets and blend in with whatever surroundings you live in. And where I grew up in Cleveland, there was no Chinatown or Asia Town. So the Japanese Americans lived scattered. They were scattered, and their community would come together in parks or for events, but there was never a central location for them to exist in. And I think that's how it is here. I know someone who's doing a documentary on their family's Chinese grocery in Augusta, Georgia, and the Chinese community lived within the Black communities. And that's who they worked with and lived with and did business with. And in Atlanta, actually, Atlanta is a booming place for Asian communities and Asian Americans, Korean, Vietnamese. There's a whole row, it's called Church Row. And it's one major strip of, it's a boulevard or something like that. And it just has enormous Korean churches. So I know that Atlanta is becoming quite a booming location for newly arrived Asian immigrants and Asian American communities. I'm in Savannah, and there's a couple like Asian groceries. Like I make it a point to figure out which ones to go to if I want to buy like nori or kamaboko or something like that. Like I have pinpointed the best Asian groceries, but they're not big. They're very small. They're kind of like hole in the wall stores, but there's no visual Asian American community here. There is a Korean church, but I think they're very much kind of under the radar. I mean, this is a very traditional Southern place. And if there are Asian Americans here or Asian residents here, they're likely newly arrivals. So, you know, the experience in the South, from what I can tell, is I think it's I think you're a bit of a fish out of water, and you're just trying to like blend in as best as possible, or trying to figure out where you belong. But I think the experience will always be that you're always going to be kind of perceived as an outsider. And teaching at Georgia Southern, I teach at Georgia Southern. I've had students who tell me that, you know, after meeting me, they thought that I would not speak English just based upon my last name. So I think that even I can see that the exposure of my students to Asian or Asian American people is very limited. And there's still this perception that if you have an Asian last name, you're going to be an immigrant and you're not going to speak English, and they're not going to be able to understand. So there's still this stigma that if you're Asian, you're likely some sort of foreigner or something like that. And I would assume it's like that in Mississippi and Alabama and Florida and Louisiana. Louisiana has an enormous Vietnamese population. I know a number of there's large fishing communities in New Orleans and Louisiana that were living in the bayou and on the river and Mississippi River, and they were prominent in fishing. And someone made a documentary about that. I think it's called Sea Drift or something like that. Tim Tsai, I think, made it. So there are Asian stories down here. They're just not mined as well and exposed. But that is something that I have seen that Center for Asian American Media is making a very strong effort to focus on this region, as is Southern Documentary Fund is kind of trying to do that as well, and Real South. So there are some arts organizations who are trying to reach out to Asian American or Asian artists and filmmakers in this region and are trying to expose that. There's another documentary, it's called Far East Deep South, and it's about someone's experience growing up in Mississippi. I think he's Vietnamese, the main character, who's also the filmmaker. But largely these stories are Asian American stories. They're coming out of African American neighborhoods, and that's kind of who I think a lot of them are. That's where I think the Asian people and communities and families are living, amongst African American communities.
Thank you. And you see that in LA too, in Koreatown. And I think we coming up, living in California and growing up in the Central Valley, you don't realize how privileged you are to be able to find your own community, even if, you know, sometimes different cities, you know, there's a little bit spread out, but for the most part, I think that, especially if you go to a bigger city like San Francisco or in LA, you can definitely find those communities. So thinking about the South, myself, I'm always very terrified of what the South might be, the stereotype in my head, because I know that I can navigate a large California city and find my people always. So thank you for sharing that. I have another question. What made you decide to make this short on this specific topic?
Well, it started out, I was trying to find Asian American characters in the South, or Asian characters in the South, to try and tell that story. And I made a documentary called Good Luck Soup, which was a personal documentary, and it looked at my own family's experience in the Midwest, in the Rust Belt, in Cleveland, a major city. And I think my experience growing up was never really fitting in and trying to fit in. And I was trying to see if that was similar here in the South. So I had begun to meet with Asian Services in Action. I was reaching out to Asian American groups or nonprofits. And in my region, I'm right on the coast, there just is not, there aren't any Asian American advocacy groups or nonprofits or organizations that I could kind of go and be part of. I had tried to communicate with some Korean churches here. I just wasn't able to speak with anyone or meet with anyone. And then if I would go to like the stores, I would kind of try and talk to people. And a couple of times, some people that worked there were like, they'd look at me and be like, "You're Asian? You're Japanese?" You know, they were like shocked by that. So I had found Asian Services in Action in Atlanta, and I know they're a big national organization, and they had invited me to come meet with them and speak with all their interns. So I just formed a relationship with them. Atlanta's 3.5 hours away, so it was a bit of a haul for me to go there just to meet with people. So it was kind of difficult finding people, because it seemed everyone that was willing to speak with me was in this other part of the state. So it started out wanting to understand being Asian American in the South. And when I started speaking with Raymond, it became apparent that his story wasn't really about being Asian or Asian American. It was about being undocumented. Like, that was the story, that was the fact of his life that had the most influence upon him. So that's kind of just where I just followed the story, and that's what it was with him. I think also when I was trying to speak with him about being Asian, I don't know that he had a whole lot to say about it. It was really being an immigrant and being undocumented. That was the biggest influence upon his life. He just happened to be from the Philippines, but I mean, you could hear him speak. He speaks like a Southern guy. Like, he's very Southern, and I think he blends in well with his community and his surroundings. But that was his story, and I just went with the flow and followed that.
Thank you. Another question: are you going to create a follow-up of this documentary from these two amazing students?
No, I am working on a documentary now about rural health that I've been working on since 2019, and I'm kind of almost done with that one. I think after this is done, I'd like to get back to Asian American issues or topics that, maybe I can sort of embed myself and have more success than I did when I moved here within my own region. I'd like to kind of find what's going on in my own part of the state, and see if I could, continue telling Asian American stories. It's been very hard finding those stories and people that are willing to speak with me. But right now it's rural health in Georgia. And after this, I would like to look into some Asian American stories again.
Cool. And you already answered this question, but we'll go back to this. Are you going to continue making shorts maybe related to this topic, or why are you interested? Are you interested in making shorts on other topics? So I know you talked about a full length, but was this something you would tail back to doing again?
I would like to do more shorts. It's nice because they don't take a whole lot of time. You could do them fairly on a small crew. You could do a feature on a small crew, but the rural health one I'm doing right now is a feature, and it's a very small crew. But shorts is I think there's so much space for shorts right now, and opportunities to share it with people and to disseminate it, and to build programs like this around where you can have a bunch of people come in and discuss it and get a better understanding of the topic. Because a documentary just can't, whether it's 10 minutes or 90 minutes or 2 hours, something's always left out or not acknowledged. And I think that's what these conversations do, is they allow for a deeper discussion and understanding of the issue and the topic. So I would like to do more shorts in the future. I don't know what that would be on. I guess it's just, I mean, I wanted this, my initial goal was for this one to be a feature, this story on Raymond and Daniela. That's what I wanted it to be, but it just was better as a short. And I don't think I had the amount of time with them that would have allowed a feature. But what I tell my students is, make it as long as it needs to be. And whatever I do next, if it needs to be a short, it'll be short. If it needs to be 5-part series, it'll be a 5-part series.
Thank you. That's a perfect gem for all you students out there, right? You don't have to have the answers right away. You can fill them out and just create as it comes, right? I have another question. How does your identity as an AAPI person influence your filmmaking or teaching?
Well, I think as a filmmaker, I think growing up as a minority and someone who experienced a good amount of bullying and racism, it's given me an understanding of what it feels like to be on the outside and to be excluded and to try and figure out a way to exist within a system that isn't necessarily friendly to you. So I think that has allowed me to understand struggle a bit and to understand that and to find those stories. So, I think that I think struggling helps storytellers. I mean, it allows you to kind of just realize, like, life isn't fair all the time. And that's kind of what I've looked for in documentary stories is just unfair circumstances and just people that are just trying to make it within the system that does not help them. That's certainly the way for this rural health. I mean, healthcare in general, like, people are struggling to pay for their bills, and it's a system that does not help everybody. And I think just going through what I went through growing up has allowed me to just see that in other people and know that, people are having a hard time and to kind of empathize with them. But I think that also has allowed people to feel comfortable in speaking with me. Because when I was speaking with Raymond, I was sharing my story half the time as well too. And it wasn't just him telling his story, it was me speaking and saying, yeah, I experienced this and I totally know what you're going through in regards to things people have said to him. So I think it's just allowed me to connect with people in a unique way, to the point where they're comfortable in speaking with me.
Thank you. That being vulnerable to your students, right, and sharing your voice and making them comfortable, or anybody you work with in general. I've learned that myself. Just being who I am and being vulnerable and telling my story allows so many other way more interesting things to come up about that. Thank you for that. Here's another question. Have you faced more discrimination since the beginning of the pandemic, when Trump pinned the blame on China and many Asian Americans were attacked in the USA in public places?
I have not. I haven't faced any noticeable discrimination here. And I don't surround myself with people that where I would experience that. And I also Savannah is a pretty progressive place, so I would not expect that to happen here. There's certainly a lot of rednecks all over the place in Georgia, and every now and then I see a Trump sticker or something like that, or a MAGA hat in Savannah. But I just live in a very welcoming, open place, so I would not expect that to happen to me. Every now and then, you hear a comment, and I don't know what my students are saying behind my back or before they meet me. I mean, they could be saying horrible things for all I know. but I think once my students get to know me, or people get to know me, it hasn't, I don't know that they see the Asianness, but I really haven't experienced anything as a result of, Trump calling it the Chinese virus, or people calling it like that. I haven't. And more often I read about it in New York or on the, West Coast or something like that. So, yeah, I just haven't experienced that.
Next question. Thank you. What advice can you give to aspiring AAPI students who want to use filmmaking to highlight people's stories or their own story?
I would look at your own life and figure out, what's important to you. Documentary and filmmaking, it's an art, and good art starts with the maker, and it starts from a place of passion and desire and motivation. And I think you have to look at what is important to you and what do you have to say. I know plenty of wonderful, extremely talented cinematographers, editors, producers, and I think something that many of them don't have is they don't have that struggle. They did not experience that struggle, or the obstacles in life that gave them a point of view. And I think being a minority and going through discrimination, I think that has given me, and having a different point of view and perspective, and just being sort of an outsider, it's given me a different way of looking at things. And I always try and start with me anytime I start something. Is, what is important to me at this present moment? What am I having a hard time with at this present moment? And that's when I go out and look for people that I can connect with in some sort of way. So, and I think authorship is very important right now in storytelling, especially documentary storytelling. What gives you the right to tell a particular story? So I think you have to look at yourself and figure out what is important to you. And then if you find a great story, I think you also have to ask yourself, should I be the person telling the story? Do you have the right to tell the story? You're as a documentary filmmaker or a storyteller, you're taking other people's experiences and you're modifying them and tweaking them and editing them, and you're manipulating. I mean, there's a lot of manipulation there. Do you have the right to manipulate these people's words and stories and experiences and how they are perceived and presented? So I think you really got to look at yourself and figure out what is important to you, and what do you have to say about something. And then you can kind of go out and find those people and almost present your perspective or ideas through them in a way.
Thank you. I think that's, all the students we try to teach is like, find your voice, find your passion. But that's on you. You can't really teach that, right? It has to come from within. I can tell you how I do it, but you have to find your own journey and your own voice. And the best advice I got from one of my white professors was, be yourself and tell your story. If I had as many stories as you have, man, I'd be killing it right now. So yeah, that's very good advice. Yeah. So let's just talk about some of the classes you teach. I just so some of our students could get an idea of some things you do technically or teach technically and stuff like that.
So I teach in the Multimedia Film program at Georgia Southern University, and my favorite class is a single camera class. So it's single camera filmmaking. So there's a lot of documentary filmmaking or shooting narrative scenes. I teach a cinematography course, audio for journalists, audio production, cinema studies. And someone asked, or there was an earlier question on relating to students, or kind of how I relate to them. I think that our university is somewhere around 35% African American, which is a big number. That is a huge number of African American students. The last school I was at, if I had a class of 60 students, there might be 1 or 2 Black students in there. So I have a very large number of minority students. And I am maybe one of 3 minority
professors in the department. So I think students often see me as someone that they can relate with because of that, and might be more comfortable speaking to me in a certain way. But I think with my students, I'm always trying to understand their lives and what they've been through, and I think that opens up communication between us. And then I encourage them to explore those stories in class. So, one of the first things I ask my students is, who are you? Why are you doing this? And what stories do you have to tell? Like, look at yourself. So whether it's single camera production or audio production or audio for journalists or lighting and cinematography, I'm always asking them, who are you and why do you want to tell the story? And often the best work comes out of the students who are the least skilled. So, for example, lighting and cinematography, I have one student who, she's not great technically with a camera. She's not great with lighting equipment, but she has a perspective and a voice and has had experiences that no one else in the class has ever had. And even though her work is not as visually incredible and cinematic, it is the most artistically skilled work, the most artistically valuable work. So, just being able to turn on a camera, being good with equipment does not mean that what you make is of any worth. And, that's hard for some people to kind of stomach and accept. It's a shame as well. I see students who are just so skilled at stuff, but there's no passion. Like you said, you can't teach passion. And there are some students who can do wonderful things with a camera and lighting equipment and can edit, skillfully and masterfully, but there's just no soul to their work. And all they're going to do when they graduate is probably go and I don't know what they're going to do, but I mean, it's not art. There's just no art to it. So, you can't teach passion. You have to have that. You gotta find that yourself.
I love that. It comes from the gut. It comes from the soul, right? And you can see it right away. You can see it right away. That's beautiful. So another question, where can folks who want to share their story through film go to? Is there a specific platform to volunteer or apply?
Well, I think that for me, when I was kind of brought into Center for Asian American Media, that was the very first time that I had people fostering my kind of story as an Asian American. So I think you got to figure out, I think you have to find the community or the group or the nonprofit or the arts organization who is fostering your ideas or fostering people like you and fostering the sorts of stories that you relate to. And they're incredible at just bringing and growing those voices and ideas. I mean, Center for Asian American Media, I owe so much to them because they saw the story that I was trying to tell, and they saw value in it, and they supported it, and watered it, and they helped it grow. So, that was just an incredible opportunity, and it's not like I was close to them. I mean, they're in Oakland or San Francisco or something like that. So, and I'm on the East Coast, so it's not like I could just go and visit with them. It just was a lot of correspondence over email and a lot of applications, but they saw what I was doing and helped it grow. So I think one way to really get started is find the community that you are part of, or that you want to be part of, or that you relate with, and go to them. Because if your story relates to them, they will see that, and they will support you. They will find a way to support you.
Thank you for that. And that's for the visual arts in general. Find your people, find your community, find the people that you want to work with, work for, and network and start building, because you have similar voices, you share similar experiences, and there will be people there that are willing to support you throughout your career. My last question, so it's almost time, we have 3 minutes left. My last question is, what do you want to tell your young 18-year-old self barely getting into college with this dream?
Oh my gosh. I was such a horrible student. And you know what?
Me too. Don't worry. Me
Oh
too.
God,
Bad.
isn't that wild? And now you're a
Yeah.
teacher. Now
Oh,
you're like
yeah. I tell my students that all the time.
yeah. I'm sometimes I just can't believe that I'm actually like a college professor when I was just such a horrible student. And I think that all the time. There would be so many things. And then I see myself in so many of my students, people that care, but they just don't apply it within like an academic setting. Like they try so hard at other things, but they don't show up when they're supposed to. So there's so many things I would want to tell myself. I mean, one is reputation is important. Like don't burn bridges. Don't be insulting. Don't be disrespectful to people. Like your teachers are there to help you, and you're creating a reputation for yourself that will follow you. I would tell myself there are so many things there are many things that you don't want to do, but do them. Like just figure out a way how to do them and do them well. The classes that or the information that you think that you don't care about, learn about it. Like I think I took a economics in Southeast Asia course or something like that, and I did not care at all about it. And I wish I can go back and care about it, because you're not making documentaries about making documentaries. You're making documentaries about life and the world. And I wish I had taken that class seriously. And I took sign language and I just didn't care about it. And I wish I had cared about it. Like show up and be curious, and never think that you're too good to learn something, and never think that you know everything, because you don't. Your teachers don't know everything. There are plenty of things your teachers don't know. We're all students. So man, I really think it comes down to reputation. Like don't do things that are going to make you look bad or burn bridges or insult others, because that will be your reputation in the world. But God, I think about that all the time. I look at my students all the time and just think, God, I was just like you. I was such a disrespectful, horrible student. And hopefully when I tell them that, it registers and they change. I don't know if it does, but yeah. Man,
Perfect. Yeah, you left them with some gems right there. Yeah, because I feel exactly the same thing. Yes, thank you. Well, we're up with time. So anybody want to reach out to me, we can reach out to Matthew on your behalf. So anybody out there that has some more questions, thank you. This is very inspiring, and thank you for your time. Thank you for everybody who helped build this. And we hope to see you tomorrow for tomorrow's event with Donald Fan, who is a gaming artist. So we're still with visual arts here. So please reach out to Matthew, reach out to me, and thank you everybody for this wonderful event.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was great being here and speaking with you all.